go to KwaZulu-Natal, where the provincial government is tightening measures to slow the spread of the coronavirus. This as the number of infections continues to rise in the province. Durban has now been identified as a hotspot. eThekwini Mayor Mxolisi Kaunda earlier outlined the city's plans to tackle the pandemic. ENCA's Mawande Keswa was there and joins us live now for an update. So the plan centers around eThekwini, Mawande, and that's because in terms of the assessment of the spread and the patterns of the COVID-19, that's where many of the infections are taking place at the moment.
Yes, indeed. This has had an adverse effect in terms of how the city itself is operating and how the city maintains a status of being known as South Africa's playground is concerned. I'm going to reference some of the measures that have been put in place and give you just some information that the mayor relayed to us. And before the country was declared in a state of a national disaster, there has been a decline of 165,000 in the number of visitors in the Easter period. So that is between March and May, a decline of 165,000 visitors, which if we compare to 2019, it was projected that we would see an increase in these numbers. There has been a decline of around 300 million rand in direct spending, as well as 600 million in the contribution to GDP. The city of eThekwini contributes to about 10% of the national GDP if we look at those numbers. We're also looking at 1,400 in employment contribution, as well as 39 million rand in government taxes were expected. Now, because of this abnormal situation, those are the losses that we are looking at. We've also seen a number of events being postponed, which has led to the decline or to losses of about 288,000 in terms of visitors. Now, if we look at the positives, there have been measures that have been put in place to boost particularly the tourism sector. Those include bed and breakfast, B&Bs, will be able to apply to the municipality to pay their residential rates for a limited time. Now, they need to apply to the municipality in order to have that. There will also be a reintroduction of Durban visitors as a new and fresher, clean city, considering what is being done during this period. A lot of cities are cleaner than usual. A lot of cities are also using this time to straighten out a number of things, including service delivery. They'll also be aggressively focusing more on beaches to ensure that more get a blue flag status. There'll also be an increase in funding provided to community trust organizations from 250,000 to 500,000 to market their areas to create new tourism opportunities. In the midst of this, there was a situation where the city was clamping down on land grabs, and they were taken to court by abahlali basemjondolo, of which they were able to overcome that hurdle when they won that court application. Let's take a listen to what the mayor had to say in relation to this.
It would be remiss of me if I do not sound a warning to those who continue to take advantage of lockdown by invading land and erecting illegal structures in our municipality. The regulations on COVID-19 do not shade away the bylaws and the laws of this country, since we are not a banana republic. We are aware that even today we are attending a case in court in this regard. But we can proudly report to citizens of this city that abahlali basemjondolo took us to High Court in this regard, and we won the case. Because our message has been clear. Don't take advantage of COVID-19. You go all out to disregard the lockdown regulations, you erect new structures. If you continue to do so, we'll demolish those structures without any doubt.
Mawande, I want to still, stay on what the mayor is talking about there, encouraging, residents within KwaZulu-Natal, particularly in Durban, eThekwini, not to, of course, break those regulations because the curve still needs to be flattened. We do know that Durban at this point has been identified as a hotspot when it comes to, the confirmed number of cases as well as fatalities when it comes to COVID-19. So how does he plan, of course, to ensure that residents do stay at home? Those roadblocks we've seen these past couple of days and weeks have indicated that there's still some sort of, movement on the roads, even in villages, in communities, in townships, in terms of people not necessarily adhering to the lockdown regulations.
One of those ways is using law enforcement. Now, last week, the MEC in the province for Transport and Community Safety, Begintuli, launched a vigorous approach along with the KZN Premier Mxolisi Kaunda, where they were dispersing more police officers, more SNDF members across the province as a whole. And the city is not exempt from that as well. So law enforcement is relied upon in ensuring that people adhere to the rules and regulation. If you are in the city, what you will see is quite a small number of people moving around, but law enforcement is in the vicinity, just ensuring that people adhere to the lockdown regulations. Then came the question of what about townships and rural areas? And we have been to quite a number of them since the beginning of the lockdown, where it was clear that law enforcement is also taken to those areas. When I posed the question of how far and wide can you reach, the Premier did make it clear that the resources are stretched at this point in time. However, they will make it a point to utilize and ensure that there's efficiency in the limited resources that they have, ensuring that every suburb, every township and every rural area is patrolled in terms of having visibility of law enforcement to ensure that people do adhere to the lockdown. Now, eThekwini is a hotspot if you look at the scope as a whole in terms of the province, with over 388 cases alone being from the city. So there is quite a lot of focus within the city itself in ensuring that people abide by the law, and those who don't are then taken to task. Last week, if I'm not mistaken, on one of the operations, there were over 114 people who were arrested. Now, this also posed an issue for correctional services. The MEC for Transport and Community Safety, Mr. Begintuli, did say that they were looking at a situation where they promote people being granted bail based on the offence that you have committed, to ensure that there isn't an issue of overcrowdedness in the prisons, as we already have,
right,
as well as in holding cells during this period. So that is what was outlined.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Mawande Cares, of course, updating us on the latest coming in from Durban.